Go.
This is wet to dry dressing change, sterile dressing change. We have our wound. Supplies we have are sterile bowl, the sterile drape, 4x4, 2x2s, Q-tip applicators, saline solution, sterile gloves, and a measuring device, and a pen, as well as regular gloves. Tape is also required. So to start, I'm going to take off the old dressing, put my regular gloves on. You're going to pull off the regular dressing, being careful to make it as little discomfort to the patient as possible. Pull the packing out. You're going to inspect it all to look at the COCA, color, odor, consistency, and amount of the drainage. Next, I am going to use one of my Q-tip applicator packages so I can measure any depth to the wound. If it was contoured where there was quite a bit of depth, you could mark it by looking at it and then placing your thumb where it belongs and using your measuring device to see how deep it is. Maybe 1 centimeter. And you're going to measure the width and the length, being careful not to place the measuring device on the wound. So I measure my wound. It's now time to take the gloves off and sanitize the hands. So your hands are washed, sanitized. Come back and start setting up your sterile field. To begin, we'll open the sterile drape on another surface that's high enough and clean and dry. And flip it over so you have a corner. When opening the sterile drape, make sure you're only handling the corners or the edges, and the blue side will be down. Next, we're going to open the sterile bowl, being careful not to break sterility. Make sure you're only handling the outside of the package. Next, I'll open up the 2x2. Let it drop into the sterile bowl. We'll then open up a 4x4. Be careful not to reach into the package. Dropping the sterile contents onto the sterile field. Checking my saline, make sure it's not expired. Opening up the saline. If it's already been opened, you do want to lip it. If it's been opened, if it's freshly opened, you don't have to lip it. Pour some in there. Be careful not to splash so your sterile field doesn't get wet. Time, date, and initial your saline. If you're going to use it again, it's good for 24 hours. Next, another Q-tip applicator. Keeping this one sterile. Drop it in. Gonna get some of my tape ready. It's important when taping this is you want to make sure none of the edges are left open. So you want to tape down and secure it well. So next we'll be opening the sterile gloves. Next, I'm going to come back to my wound care setup. Wring out the gauze, being careful not to get water all over the sterile field. Wring it out very well so it's just damp. You're going to open it up so that way you can pack it into the wound. Pick up one of your Q-tip applicators, and if the wound really has some depth to it, you would pack this in quite well. So you want to keep it in the center, right into the wound bed where it's not touching good tissue. You don't want to break down the good tissue. When you drop things or discard them while you're wearing sterile gloves, you want to make sure you're keeping everything above your waist. So don't let your hands lower below the waist. Next, grabbing the gauze to cover with. So know that dressing is changed, or all covered and sealed. I'm going to go to my tape. And before you get to your last piece of tape, because you don't want to write on the patient, you need a time, date, and initial. You could take your sterile gloves off and do it without your gloves on, or use your gloves as long as they're clean. Time, date, and initials. And then clean up all your supplies.